So today we're going to look at how to set up the grinders. There's two different kinds of grinders, but they work the same way. They're just a little bit of a different shape to the actual grinder itself. So first, the counter here is looking pretty clean. There's not a whole lot of glass dust or water or anything on it. So this is how we want it to look once we are done with the grinders and clean them up. We want them to look like this again, nice and clean and ready for the next class period. But we're going to look first at how to set them up. And so all the grinders are stored in this cabinet right here to the left of the sink. And so we have a couple of grinders that are the rectangular ones that look like this. So look at that. And then we also have one that's a little bit of a different shape. It's a little more round, and that's this one here. So they work the same way, they just take a little bit different amounts of water. But we are going to look at both of those. So you want to take out either grinder, it doesn't matter which one, but you want to take out a grinder and set it on the counter. Then we'll want to plug it in. And then they each have a grate that goes over the top so that you can set the glass down right on top of it. But first, before we do that, we want to make sure that there's water in the basin. So inside this little area here and this little area right in here. So just the top part. So how we do that is we have a little plastic cup here, and this one here takes about 2 of these of water. This one takes about 1 of these containers of water. So you just want to get some cold water. And I'm going to put about 1 of them in there. Oops. And if a little water gets on the counter, that's fine. There'll be water on the counter once we start using them. And I'm going to fill the other one with 2 of these. And on this style of grinder, there's a plug right on the inside of the basin. You want to make sure that's firmly in place. And so about 2 of those fills that. And this little cup's usually over here by the rags over here. And so now there's a little grate that goes over the top of each of these. So the rectangular one takes this grate here that just sits right on top. And then the round one has a slightly smaller little grate that goes on top. That's this one here. That just sits right on top there. So at this point, this is what the grinders look like. It has that little round one on there, and then that grate on there. So we're about halfway through setting that up. And then we need to get the grinder bits. So, come back over here. We have the grinder bits right in this little basket here with the Allen wrenches. The Allen wrenches are what tighten them on to the little post on the grinder. So I'm going to grab one of the grinder bits and an Allen wrench. So then the grinder bit goes right onto this little post here. It has a flat side to it, and so you want to find the flattest side. That's the side that we are going to line up the set screw with. So this is just hollow through the middle here, and we are going to put that on the post. But then this set screw right here, that is what we're going to tighten. So we want to tighten that little bit with the Allen wrench once we have it on the post here. So, want to find the flattest spot right here, and that is the side that we are going to have the set screw, this little part right here. And so you want it to be, you don't want it too high that when you set the glass on the grate here, it touches the bronze part on the bottom. You want it to touch this middle part that will grind the glass. And we don't want it so low that it'll be touching the top bronze part. We want it right about there. And then we want to tighten the set screw. So hold that in place. And then with our little Allen wrench here, we're going to tighten that. So clockwise, we'll tighten that. You just want to make sure that's nice and tight. The Allen wrench, you can use it either with this part on this part or this part on the back side. So we have that nice and tight on there. Works the same way with this one. There's a little flat side. I'm going to grab another grinder bit for this one. I'll line up that flat side with the set screw side of the actual grinder bit. And I'm going to line it up so that it's actually the grinder bit part that the glass will be touching. We don't want to touch the glass to the bronze part that is on the very top and the very bottom of the grinder bit. That's just the part that holds it on. Now that that's nice and tight, I can set the Allen wrench back in that little basket. And so now I have a grinder bit on here. So when I set the glass right on the grate, it will go up and just touch that little grinding part down there. And the same thing with this one. It'll just go right up against the grinding part. And then the very last step is to add a little sponge right behind the grinder bit. So right over here we have a little container with our grinder sponges. So you just want to take one of those little sponges, get it wet with some cold water, and then just stick it right back behind the grinder bit. It will touch the grinder bit. That's what we want, so that when the grinder bit spins around, it touches the wet sponge, grabs some water, and it will keep your piece of glass wet. So I'm just going to grab another one for the other grinder. And that's going to go just right back behind there, so that when it turns on, it's touching that sponge there, and the water is flinging around. It'll fling back onto the wall as well, onto the counter. That's totally fine. We just want the piece of glass to stay wet so that it stays cool, so it doesn't get too hot and crack, but also to keep down any glass dust. So as we're grinding the glass, it's going to have little glass dust particles, and we want to keep that in the water, because if it's in water, even though it sprays onto the counter, if it's wet, it's not going to be airborne and we're not going to be breathing it in. We really don't want to be breathing in glass dust. So now I have both grinders set up. So you just want to turn it on, set your piece of glass flat on the grate here. You don't want to hold up your glass at all, at an angle at all, because that's going to create an angle on the side of the piece of glass. You want it flat on the grate, and you just press it right up against the grinder bit as it's going. You don't have to worry about accidentally touching the grinder bit here. It's not going to hurt you unless you hold your hand there forever. If your hand slides off the piece of glass or something and you end up touching this bit, it's not going to hurt. Same thing with this one, works the same way.